Dear friends, together with this new statement, I am publishing the updated and amended version of my indestructible, as no one can stop it, civil complaint for damages. The reason for this is that two major events caused a kind of sea change in my fake case. Event number one is that Vivian Fisher, my former co-host at the Corona Committee, published an article at the very end of 2025 in which she, I'm sure inadvertently, admitted that both she and the two Berlin attorneys/agents for the German Domestic Intelligence Service CPA lied in court when they were questioned in my fake case. This means that the entire foundation of Judge Schindler's decision is gone, and there is now, at least for any not corrupt court, just reasonable cause for a criminal investigation of the three attorneys, Vivian Fischer, Justus Hoffmann, and Antonia Fischer, for lying in court. In German courts, witnesses are not usually under oath when they testify. And for a criminal investigation of Judge Schindler for obstruction and perversion of justice, a very serious felony, as I've emphasized before. The other remarkable event is an order coming from the Göttingen fake judiciary, which confirmed the suspicion that those who had me abducted in Mexico, subjected to the sadistic/satanic measures of white torture in Göttingen, and then sentenced to an outrageously long prison term, either belong directly to the Epstein community of ritual child abusers and baby eaters, or are protecting this community. As the Epstein files have shown, Bill Gates asked Epstein to come up with an investment business model through which the super-rich cult members could invest in the pandemic and make truckloads of money. All of this will be investigated and exposed in every little detail. Behind the scenes, we have been very busy working on a plan to achieve this outside the corrupt legal systems of the Western world. Just to allay any fears any of you might have, I am still standing. Nothing the monsters did to break me and shut me up, which will destroy them, because we have been able to expose their crimes and the names of the perpetrators, has worked. I, together with all of you, will make sure that not one of the monsters and their little puppets will escape justice. Maybe this is the only good that came out of my experiences in two different prisons, apart from the realization that we do not need prisons, not even for the monsters, as they will be disposed of differently, I'm sure. No one and nothing can break me or anyone else on this side of the fence. I believe I have already proven that I do not crack under pressure, so believe me when I say, we will get anything and everything done that needs to be done so that we will live in a humane, clean world, our world, without any monsters. But let me start with the first of the two above-mentioned events that caused me to update and amend the civil complaint for damages, that is, with Vivian Fisher's written. Now we even have documentary evidence, which is always better and more reliable than the testimony. Confession that both she and the two attorneys, Antonia Fischer and Justus Hoffmann, lied in court when they were questioned in the winter and early spring of 2024. It is the article which Vivian Fisher published on her platform 2020 News on December 21st, 2025, that dug both her in the graves of Antonia Fischer and Justus Hoffmann. Let me quickly recap what the basis of Judge Schindler's decision is. The central cornerstone of this decision is that after the initial charges of me having violated corporate law by taking the donations to protect part of the donations from getting seized by the deep state had collapsed, he claims that I violated a secret agreement that he claims had been entered into by Vivian Fisher and me, according to which the loan contracts were only entered into as fake agreements for the purpose of covering up a secret trust agreement, according to which I was obliged to transfer the loan money to a private bank account and keep it there. Only I, not Vivian Fisher, as she was unable to pay back the loan because she had used it to support herself. Unfortunately for Schindler, no such agreement exists in writing, and when he tried to push Vivian Fisher to give him the desired answer to his question if she at least had ever spoken to me about such an agreement, she simply said, "No." This left him in a very uncomfortable position because if an alleged agreement exists neither in writing nor is there any evidence that it had been entered into verbally, then of course it doesn't exist at all, except maybe in Vivian Fisher's head, but that is simply not good enough for an agreement that is a meeting of the minds. But Judge Schindler had to follow orders from those who had him by the balls. After this brief recap, here is the problem that he now has because of Vivian Fisher's article of December 21st, 2025. On page 14 of that article, she writes, "So-called loan contracts were explicitly, emphasis by me, executed as fake loan contracts." How can that be when Judge Schindler, in his decision of April 24th, 2025, was forced, because of Vivian Fisher's inadequate testimony, to write that no explicit secret agreement existed, but that we had concluded and implicitly agreed on chat communication between me and Vivian Fisher? And how did he construct/interpret email and chat communication between me and Vivian Fisher to somehow express that we implicitly agreed on his desired secret agreement? Because of this written statement by Vivian Fisher, it has now been either confirmed that Vivian Fisher lied when she, more or less as an aside, because once more she wasn't focused on what she was doing, said in court that she believed that I would transfer the loan money from the Corona Committee's bank account to my own private bank account. Full well knowing, by the way, that I didn't have any bank at that time, only one for my law firm, as the banks had canceled all of my private accounts and keep it there as what she called liquidity reserve. Or these contradictory statements by Vivian Fisher in court and out of court confirm that Judge Schindler is guilty of the felony of perversion of justice because he refused to hear any of the defense witnesses when he had called in order to refute his absolutely ridiculous new allegation. Had he, as he should according to German law of criminal procedure, given us the opportunity to question Vivian Fisher and her attorney, this entire, pardon my French, shit show would have exploded right in his face. Why? Because obviously not even Vivian Fisher's attorney believed her weird story, and I had therefore provided the prosecution and the court with an affidavit from me in which I declare under penalty of perjury that Vivian Fisher and I had only concluded loan contracts and that we had never entered into any other agreements, let alone a secret or open trust agreement. But there's more. Vivian Fisher also admits on page 4 of her article of December 21st, 2025, that Justus Hoffmann and Antonia Fischer declared in an affidavit of July 2025 that Reiner Fuellmich informed them in a telephone call in August of 2021 that the Corona Committee had purchased gold. This declaration stands in contrast to their testimony in which they allege that they knew nothing about the gold purchase. This means, of course, that Antonia Fischer and Justus Hoffmann lied in court, and this lie strongly suggests that they also lied when they stated in court that they knew nothing about the loan contracts, when I had correctly explained that I had told them about the loan contracts when I had visited them in their strange one-room law office in November of 2020, right after Vivian Fisher and I had been warned that there was imminent danger of the Corona Committee's bank account being seized by the deep state, that is, by the employers of Antonia Fisher and Justus Hoffmann, as we now know. Be it as it may, With these two lies and the very thin carpet that Judge Schindler had invented has been pulled out from under his fake decision, it now stands there like alone amid air, like the Roadrunner's pursuers when they have literally gone too far, over the edge, that is. For one, if Antonia Fischer and Justus Hoffmann knew everything as their lie in court strongly suggests, they cannot have suffered any damages because of my and Vivian Fischer's loan. And if no one suffered any damage, there is no breach of a fiduciary duty that anyone is criminally liable for. And second, because there is no secret or open agreement other than the loan contracts Vivian Fischer and I concluded, there is no fiduciary duty arising from such a non-existent agreement that I could have violated. In short, there is no crime committed by me, and no one suffered any damages from the loan contracts except for me, whose money Antonia Fischer and Justus Hoffmann, together with their third partner in crime, and more than just this one, I can assure you, stole in order to make it impossible for me to pay back the loan and thus make their criminal complaint look plausible prima facie, that is, at first glance, at least to someone whose brain is well ventilated. But there is another event that prompted me to update and amend my civil complaint. As you know, I can only talk to my wife on the phone with a correctional officer monitoring such phone calls, which are cut off after 20 minutes. This in itself is completely illegal and a violation of Article 10 of the German Constitution, which states that telephone conversations are absolutely protected, which means protected against the state's overreach, as the first 20 articles of the Constitution are so-called defensive rights against the state. And conversations between husband and wife must not be monitored at all, because this violates not just their right to privacy, that is, their right to be left alone, but in fact destroys the very core of this right, not just private, but intimate conversations between husband and wife. The only exception to this is if there is clear and convincing evidence to show that husband and wife either conspired to commit a crime, and a serious one at that, or if they are inciting violence. No such evidence, in fact, no evidence at all exists to that effect concerning the conversations between Inka and me. But then again, who cares if you have orders you must follow, as Judge Schindler, who turns out to be responsible for this white torture light, if you will, is. However, Judge Schindler went one step further in a phone conversation between Inka and myself at the end of March. The officer who monitored my phone call with Inka interrupted us in the middle of the call, just when I started to explain to Inka that we would get the pedophiles who are responsible for my abduction, the white torture, and my incarceration, as we now have very strong and credible evidence that at least some of them are either directly involved in the Epstein scandal or protecting the Epstein community, as I have now known from the Epstein files, was tasked by Bill Gates with coming up with an investment business model by which the super-rich monsters could invest in the pandemic. I explained all of this to the officer who locked me up again after my phone call. He appeared to be confused and didn't really want to know anything about this. The next day, the man in charge of pretrial detention, Mr. Heitkemper, called me to his office and asked me about the incident. I explained everything again, the violation of Inka's and my constitutional rights, and the fact that we now have all the above-mentioned evidence implicating at least some of the perpetrators of the crimes committed against me. And he said that this wasn't really the correctional officer's fault. Rather, he, just like everyone else at Bremervoorde prison, was just following orders. Orders coming from the Göttingen judiciary, of course. Well, there you have it. We have come full circle from my legal work from more than 20 years ago when I represented survivors of ritual child abuse in court, my work representing consumers and medium-sized corporations against fraudulent global corporations, culminating in my work exposing the pandemic. and now the Epstein scandal ties it all together. For these two reasons, the new evidence showing that the prosecution's star witnesses lied in court and the Epstein scandal lurking behind the crimes committed against me, I updated and amended my civil complaint for damages. This civil complaint is indestructible because, 1, in civil law, there is no prosecutor who can be ordered by politicians equals the deep state to not let that case go forward, and 2, the perpetrators of the crimes against me, because they missed all deadlines, file for any preliminary injunctions against me, and 3, they cannot even file a criminal or civil complaint for defamation against me because this would inevitably lead to a hearing of all the witnesses that Judge Schindler didn't want to be heard, and that will just as inevitably lead to the entire truth coming out and the lies being exposed in bright daylight, the best of disinfections, as we all know. The silence of the perpetrators who are stuck between a rock and a very, very hard place means a tacit admission, or to use Judge Schindler's terminology, an implicit admission, that everything I write in my civil complaint, and by extension also in my much longer criminal complaint, is correct, is the truth. Now, when I look at everything I have just told you, even the apparent chaos in the Middle East, I now see every reason to remind myself of the 70s band Kool and the Gang and their hits Celebrate and Fresh, but also to remember some of the great Fleetwood Mac's hits, such as Dreams, Go Your Own Way, and You Make Loving Fun. It's almost party time as far as I'm concerned, my friends. I'll see you all very soon.